My name is Matthew Heineman. I'm the director of Cartel Land. So, with Cartel Land, I really wanted to sort of take this issue of cartel violence, of narco violence, out of the headlines and put myself right in the middle of the action to see how it's affecting everyday people, and then the response of everyday people rising up to fight back, and then the ramifications of what happens when citizens, take the law into their own hands. With the film, I really wanted to create this parallel portrait of vigilantism on both sides of the border, fighting the same common enemy, the Mexican drug cartels. I was embedded with both groups for almost a year, and obviously the film sort of unraveled in a way that I never could have dreamed of or predicted or imagined. When I first stepped foot in Mexico, at least, I thought I was telling this very simple hero-villain story of guys in white shirts fighting against guys in black hats in sort of the classic Western sense. And over time, the lines between good and evil became ever more blurry. And it's really hard to decipher, who's good and who's bad. And that sort of complexity fascinated me. I really wanted to find out, who these guys really were, what was really happening. And that's what kept driving me to go down to sort of, unravel this onion of vigilantism. I think in some sense the film is about human nature and how, what happens when citizens live in a society where government institutions have failed, live in a lawless society. I think one can understand, why these groups rise up, why they felt the need to take the law into their own hands. And I think at the same time, it's human nature that, and perhaps inevitable, that, the corrupting forces of power and how, the film obviously goes in this dramatic arc. In a film like this, access is everything. I didn't want to tell a story through talking heads, through experts, through people talking from the outside, through government officials. I really wanted to be right on the inside, as the story unraveled before me. I wanted to be there, at every moment, as the story sort of twisted and turned. And it was a very difficult way to make a film, and it was a very terrifying journey. Because I'm not a war reporter, I've never been in any situations like this before, and obviously the film, led me to, shootouts between the vigilantes and the cartel, places of torture, meth labs, places I never could have imagined ever filming in. And I think what allowed me to get that access were a couple of things. For one, I was very clear with my intentions. I was very clear that I had no agenda. I had no goal in mind. I wasn't scripting the story, and I think El Doctor, who's the protagonist, the leader of the outer defenses, really responded to that. And then time. I didn't just parachute in and out for 2 or 3 or 4 days. I was there for almost 9 months, and in those 9 months, I was able to develop deep relationships, develop storylines, develop characters. And ultimately that led me into that scene that begins and ends the film in the meth lab. That's something that I fought for months and months and months and months. But it wasn't until I think the second to last shoot that we finally got that call saying, "You're in. Be in this town square at 6 p.m. and a group of masked men met us there, and they led us through these towns and smaller towns and fields and smaller fields. And then they stopped and they said, we're here to provide protection." Another car slowly drove at us and drove us into the lab. And I sort of envisioned this shooting the scene for a long, long time. But as I got out there, it was, pitch black. I'd envisioned sort of shooting it in this halogen lit trailer, but as I said, it was out in the forest, and I don't shoot with lights, and so I just couldn't believe that after fighting so hard to get to this place, I couldn't see anything with my camera. And the head chef starts to show me around the process of shooting cooking meth, and with this little flashlight he's showing me, and it's with that little flashlight that I lit the scene. There's plenty of times when I felt in danger. I think that first shootout was obviously it was the first time I'd ever been in a situation like that, and so it was absolutely terrifying. But I think being behind the camera and shooting myself actually calmed me down. Focusing on the craft of filmmaking, focusing on exposing. I had nothing to draw upon in terms of experience being in those situations. I never fired a gun. I never filmed people firing guns, but I knew how to film. So I really sort of went into this sort of instinctual, just focusing on the craft of filmmaking mode, and that I think calmed me down in those very intense situations.
Excellent. Just got one last.
Two pieces of advice that I give to aspiring filmmakers are: one, just get your hands dirty, go out and make stuff. And I think the wonderful thing about what we do is it's such a malleable form. There's so many different ways you can tell stories now, and the access to filmmaking equipment, the access to distributing your content has been democratized, and it's a wonderful time to be making films. A really exciting time. I feel very lucky and very honored to be able to do what I do. And as far as Cartel Land goes, I think Al Mazel's, I heard him speak one time, and he said, if you end up with a story that you started with, then you weren't listening along the way. And I think that's good advice for life itself, and it's good advice for filmmaking. And it's something that I very much sort of heard in the back of my head at almost every day while shooting Cartel Land is, let the story take you. Let the story dictate where to go. Don't sort of go into a story with a preconceived notion or agenda, because that sort of stifles the potential, stifles the story from unfolding in a beautiful, natural way, which I was lucky enough to have happen with Cartel Land.